Welcome back to another episode of Rob Dog's Vlog. So today we're here at Parramatta Park, and Parramatta Park has a rich history. The very second British settlement in Sydney in 1788. I'm going to take you guys just up there to the Philip Ruddock Heritage Site, beginning as a traditional Aboriginal gathering place for over 40,000 years. So if you look here, we're literally on the streets of Parramatta, and if I do a U-turn, look at this. Look at all this old heritage stuff. Some of the very first buildings in Australia right here. As a bricklayer, it's quite fascinating because it's still the same measurements as bricks we use today, 230 long. They pretty much look very close to the bricks we use today. And you can see here that I had like three skins on the outside. You can see they use pavers for their floors. It's crazy how much buildings have changed in 200 years. Look at all these clay bricks, man. You got like 4 skins on the outside there, and then you got like 2 on the inside here. It's amazing. That would have kept out the Australian heat for sure. We'll go downstairs and we'll see if we can get a bit closer to it. Let's go. As the first fleet arrived in Australia in January 1788, only a few months had passed before Governor Philip Arthur chose Parramatta as the official second settlement by April 1788, and was originally named Rose Hill, then being named Parramatta in 1791, reflecting the traditional name Parramatta or Parramatta, which is commonly translated as the place where the eels lie down due to the large quantity of eels in the river. And it's only just occurring to me now, that's why it is that the best rugby league team in the world is called the Parramatta Eels. Go the Eels. So to think right behind me is some of the oldest buildings made in Australia by European settlers. The second oldest settlement in Australia. There's a whole lot around here. Let's get into it. See right here, you got the bricks that they used to use. Here, it's an old map in 1844 of Parramatta. Is one of the earliest to record private residence occupation on a different allotments of land. It documents the transition of Parramatta from a government settlement into a flourishing township dominated by private property. By 1972, 100 huts were built in Parramatta along High Street, now known as Church Street. So you can see how the old setups were back in the day. You got the main fence, and then you got all these old buildings. They were built on large blocks to prevent the spread of fire, as they were using flammable materials such as timber and thatched roofs. By 1836, the population of Parramatta was around 3,600 people, as Australia was rapidly transforming from a penal colony into a free society. Like any growing economy, this creates an opportunity to buy land for housing and business in the early 1800s. Parramatta's settlement had businesses such as bakeries, a wheelwright's workshop, and pubs like the Wheat Sheaf Hotel. They also had Parramatta Jail and a series of hospitals, which I will take you to after. It is a 5-minute walk from this place. So here's some of the rubble that was left. There was a layer of rubble left behind after these buildings were demolished, with remnants of terracotta pipes, window glass, floor tiles, roof tiles, and other remnants for archaeologists to uncover. Because glass and clay items don't decompose, there were items found that were almost in its original condition. Humans have always created and invented household and general use items in every country and culture, but back in these times, England was one of the most advanced in the world. As you can see on screen, there are some antique sewing thimbles and some antique glass bottles. What appears to be an old pair of scissors is actually an old clock winding key and an old pocket watch. And then you can see a variety of glassware and stone ink bottles. Children will always be children, and kids will always love to play with toys and neat items to interact with out of natural curiosity. And found in this vicinity is a variety of kids' toys, like metal ships, chess pieces, ceramic toys, dolls, and most importantly, the marbles. I might sound old here, but when I went to school, kids still played with marbles. But now in this modern day, kids play video games. And I love video games, don't get me wrong, but you can't beat a good old simple game like marbles. Health and hygiene is a very important factor to human survival, especially 250 years ago. The sad truth is, the world's population would be much lower if it wasn't for modern medicine, and something like a rash or an infection could be the start to a slow, painful death, like for example, smallpox, which unfortunately ravaged the Aboriginal population, as they had no herd immunity due to never being exposed to the disease. But what they were able to find here at least was some old children's lice combs and a variety of perfume and medicine glass containers. The first tall glass you can see is known as an antique aqua medicine bottle, and on the right you have a ceramic pot used for ointments. The stoneware pot with writing is Holloway's ointment, a popular cure-all medicine from the 19th to the early 20th century. The most vital and non-negotiable part for human survival is a storage place or easy access to water for consumption. The Parramatta River was the original and primary source of water for both Indigenous people and early European settlers. In 1815, Governor Macquarie had a public well dug for settlers to use. 3 years later, he ordered a dam to be built across the river, creating a reservoir. And in 1831, a second dam was built near the present Cumberland Hospital to address growing demand, but pollution and shortages persisted. Cisterns and wells were used too, and archaeological evidence shows they were filled with waste once they became polluted or no longer needed. For the early settlers of Parramatta, plates and crockery were scarce, as they were generally very expensive in the early New South Wales colony. As the settlement grew, the need for such everyday items increased, which in turn made them locally produce their own plates and crockery out of local clay, but the quality itself could not match that from imports. There is evidence of diets of the first settlers of Parramatta, including fruit stones, bones, and shells found in the excavated areas. The people living here ate local wildlife like fish, shellfish, and mussels, and imported food like ginger beer, wine, vegetables, fruits, and bottled pickles, so their diet was a mixture of traditional Aboriginal food mixed with British food. Humans have used glass for over 4,000 years from ancient Mesopotamia and Egypt, but the English started using glass during the Roman period, and in the early 17th century marked the first time window glass was manufactured by Britain. When the settlers arrived, glass was a valuable luxury with limited supply, mainly used for bottles, and then becoming more common. It was used for decorative and building purposes. To the Indigenous Australians, glass was used for its practical function as a cutting tool, which they adapted stoneworking techniques to the new material. So look at all these fragments of glass here. They were found in this excavation site in 2005, which is not that long ago. It's quite interesting actually. If you come over here, a distinctive maker's mark can be found on the back of every imported ceramic plate, dish or bowl. These details can tell us who manufactured the object and which town and country it was made in. The main source of plates and crockery came from England, but when supplies were critical to early survival, imports from China and India were also very important. So basically China and England were the best ceramic makers back in the day, and they used to copy each other to get better and better, so the competition was constantly there. Speaking more about trade itself, trade channels to these countries were established soon after settlement. Until 1834, restrictions on trade with Chinese meant that most Chinese goods came to Australia via India, which this trade channel brought a range of imports from fish, soap, rice, alcohol, tobacco, furniture and table decoration, which brought people new ideas and new fashion to the colony. Now this part is very interesting because we use cents, we use coins, dollars. Right here, look. Australia used pounds, shillings and pence until 1966, when it adopted the decimal system with the Australian dollar divided into 100 cents. Smoking tobacco was a widespread habit to both European colonists and Aboriginal people. Wealthier people smoked through wooden pipes, cigars and snuff to consume tobacco. Men and women smoked with semi-disposable clay pipes that lasted a few days before breaking. Over 1 million pipes were imported to the colony in 1836. Liquor and inns have been a part of British culture as early as the late 12th century, which also come alongside with its black market counterpart, often known as a sly grog shop. Sly grog shops would sell illegal and poor quality alcohol that was cheaper and easier to obtain, as alcohol was an effective painkiller and the main source of diversion for the early settlers, enduring hardship from being in a new country and loneliness from leaving their old country behind. Usually disguised as general stores, These shops led to alcoholism for both the settlers and Aboriginal people, which made crime run wild. Look at that. The first hotel in Australia. Right here. So right here you got a selection of discarded remains of oysters, shellfish and sea snails that were excavated here in 2005. If it wasn't for the Aboriginal people of Australia, the convicts would have struggled to survive. In essence, Aboriginal people possessed the original knowledge, and early English settlers, through observation, learned to collect these local resources, especially oysters, as they were a good source of protein. Here's the old set out, there's the Parramatta River, and there's the main road. To think, to think this is over 200 years old. It's quite amazing because the bricks are still standing. You got the sandstone, and for such a long time ago, it's actually quite a interesting build because, being a bricklayer, I can look at this now and I can see that they don't perfectly square it the way we do these days with 3, 4, 5 and certain things, but it's just amazing to see it still standing. Even though this is just the foundation, wow, like just look at this, wow. There, the old clay pipes. Probably still got a bit of turd in it from years ago. I've got about 15% left on my GoPro, so I'm just going to show you around here. Right there, you got a building from 1881. Right here, you have the Centennial Memorial, which was built in 1888. Right there, you got Peter Wynn. Every Parramatta supporter knows this shop. Right. Now I'm going to show you the Heritage Hospital, the PJP. It's cool now, it's starting to be like New Zealand a little bit more, where the culture is like really pushed. In New Zealand you just see mouldy stuff everywhere. In Australia it's kind of a little bit pushed away, which is kind of bullshit in my opinion. The original owners of the land should be respected and have their culture and everything all around, but that's my opinion. This is a carving of the royal coat or arms of the United Kingdom. The text visible on the banner at the bottom reads "Et mon droit," which means God and my right in French. So here it is, the old Heritage Hospital. I mean, it doesn't look like a hospital anymore, but have a go at this. Isn't that amazing? That's like 200 years old as well. The old hospital in Parramatta. This was one of the first Parramatta hospital sites here on Marsden Street, which contains the remains of a colonial-era convict hospital, which used to be called the Parramatta Lunatic Asylum and has been in continuous institutional use since 1873. This site had many names until it was renamed the Cumberland Hospital in 1983. It is the longest continuously used health site in Australia, starting with a tent hospital in 1788, to now fast forward to today, where it is the largest mental health facility in New South Wales and the oldest in Australia. I wonder if they used squares and measuring tapes back in these days, or if they just kind of winged it, or if they used like a piece of stick that was a measurement and they just used that measurement to get the same measurement. So you got the doctor's residence right here. Bricklaying hasn't changed that much. We just use expansion joints now, that's about it. And then you got the hospital right there is where we just looked at. This is kind of cool because usually I'm traveling an hour or 2 hours to go to a place and see some history. Where right there, it's like half an hour from a place and you got some of the most oldest history in Australia from European settlement. Wow. Well, I just want to say thanks again for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Lately I've been getting into my Australian and Aboriginal history. So hope you guys enjoyed this one. I'll see you on the next one. And get amongst.